Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. Hey everybody, this is Tracy Stuckrath with Thrive Meetings and Events and the Eating at a Meeting podcast. And I am so excited to talk to you, Duskie Estes of the Farm
to Pantry.
Farm to Pantry. I had a brain fart there for a second. So, Duskie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with you all.
Thanks. Well, and we were laughing just before we went live is that I was reading a story about her on the Food Network page, and somebody asked her, what's something that unusual that you would find in your refrigerator? And she's like, a pig's head. And then she showed me the pig's head that's on her wall. So that's because she's all about not wasting food, which is one of the reasons that I picked you for this Women's History Month. So
well, thank you.
Okay, so you are the executive director of Farm to Pantry that gleans food from farms around the county to help feed people.
Yes, exactly. We rescue fruits and vegetables from farms and properties in Sonoma County and make sure nothing goes wasted. And we take it to people in need. So it's crazy rewarding. We get to be Robin Hood every single day. And we get to deliver the most nutritious fruits and vegetables to be added to the boxes and bags at food pantries that are normally canned goods and dried goods. Mm-hmm. And that's only one of my hats. I actually wear a ton of hats. I am also on the founding board of the Bay Area Ranchers Cooperative, which was founded this July. And we are bringing a mobile processing unit to Sonoma and Marin County, because currently the ranchers in Sonoma County have nowhere to process, and they're all driving their animals 250 miles each way.
Wow.
It's ridiculous for carbon emissions, of course. Mm-hmm. It's also ridiculous that the animals are raised in Marin and Sonoma County and sold in Marin and Sonoma County, but they have to make a 500-mile trip to do it. So we're on the cusp of actually turning this around, which is crazy exciting because part of our manifesto at our restaurant that we had for 19 years, we had a farm to table restaurant in Sonoma County called Zazu Kitchen and Farm. And mm-hmm. we are personally farmers and ranchers, but we also bought everything, produce and meat, direct from Sonoma County makers, growers, farmers, ranchers. And I saw the loss of ranchers every single year because of lack of processing. And it was something that I had been fighting for saving for the 19 years. We really believed in saving the local ranchers so that animals could live on pasture rather than be confined. Because I was actually a vegetarian for 23 years, if you can believe it. And now I raise pigs in my backyard and have a pig in my office and and some goats and sheep on my floor. But so it's all full circle. But basically I had given up. I thought we were just going to be left with commodity confined meat because the politicians weren't changing the regulations in time. And so this new cooperative that has founded of 80 ranchers coming together is incredible. And I just can't believe we're actually going to be able to have local meat that's pasture raised in the Northern Bay Area. We're crazy lucky.
Okay, that's awesome. So do you have an FDA or USDA person that's going to be driving around with the truck?
So it will be a USDA unit, and it'll be stationed both in Marin and Sonoma County, and ranchers will bring their animals there. So
that's awesome. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go down to White Oak Pasture in Southwest Georgia to see Will Harris's, and he's got his own processing on his farm.
Amazing.
And and somebody's like, well, were you grossed out? Because I actually watched them do it. And it was beautiful. And, when they were skinning and things, and I know some people might get grossed out about that, but it was actually done very humanely. And it was mind-boggling amazing. So, yeah, but I'm glad that you're being able to bring that and do it mobily, which is, that's awesome.
And well, I was a vegetarian for 23 years because I care so much about the animals. And in raising my own, what I learned is that they give an immense gift of their life for us to eat. And the best way to respect that gift is to make sure that they have a great life up until that one last moment. Which is not how most of our meat comes to us. And so we have the responsibility of the power of our dollar. Like, we can choose to fund local ranchers that are raising them outside, or we can choose commodity meat, which is obviously cheaper. But the long-term cost on the environment and obviously the wrongdoing ethically for the animal outweigh. So we just need to use actually protein less, like eat less meat, but eat the right kind, and eat more vegetables to balance the pocketbook.
Exactly. And, and if you're growing your own vegetables or getting them from your local farmer, that even adds to that as well.
Yeah, you can have a huge environmental impact just by the choice of your dollar. So it really makes a difference.
It really does. And I love my local farmers. There's 2 or 3 of them in Eastern North Carolina where I am that I'm on their Instagram, I'm following, and I can't wait to see what they're growing. And my mom, I've actually converted my mom. She's like, when's Stephen's tomatoes coming? I want Stephen's heirloom tomatoes. So it's really an amazing experience. And then to go out to their farms and see what they're doing and or help them, which is what you're doing with Farm to Pantry as well. So the word gleaning, can you just tell everybody what that means and and how that process works?
Yeah. So it's actually it comes from the Bible. And it is to go onto farms and harvest food that would otherwise go wasted. And so in the pandemic, we all know the food distribution system broke down in a big major way. So especially where I live in Sonoma County, we're very connected in the farm to table movement of restaurants and farmers know each other directly and purchase directly. Right. And so when the pandemic happened and all the restaurants shuttered, all these farms lost their buyer in the, overnight. And many of them couldn't shift to grocery stores that fast because they didn't have the connections. They didn't know the buyers. They didn't package the same way. So basically it became, with no buyer on the other end, it became unworth it to spend the money on the labor to harvest. And so instead of harvesting, they would just till it all in. But meanwhile, the pandemic hit, it's a great equalizer. It hit everybody financially very hard. But in Sonoma County, we had sort of a double pile up because not only did the pandemic hit our whole community in terms of unemployment numbers rising to numbers greater than the Great Depression ever had. Wow. It also, we had the fires here. And so what happened in terms of the timing of the fires in Sonoma and Napa counties is that it was right before the grape harvest. And so all the grapes suffered from something called smoke taint, and they too weren't worth harvesting because you can't get that out of a wine. And so 80% of this year's grapes were left unharvested.
Wow.
And so that meant all the farm workers would show up. Sort of the process of discovery about smoke taint is how crop insurance works for the wine grape growers is that you have, if it gets harvested, you no longer can get your insurance. So if you were fortunate enough to have the insurance, you can't harvest the grapes. So you want to make sure that the grapes will be sold before they're harvested. So the winemaker would come out to the vineyard and do this little test and then decide day of not to harvest. And so all the farm workers would be there and they would be sent home with no work and no pay. The way it works for farm workers, of course, is that you get all of your money in the pruning season in the spring, and that tides you over to the harvest season in the fall, in the early fall, late summer, early fall. And so basically they did not get the opportunity to store up their acorns to last them all the way to spring. And so the food lines of the places that Farm to Pantry works with, the food lines exploded. For example, one nonprofit partner that we work with is an amazing nonprofit in Healdsburg called Corazon, and they help undocumented workers. And Farm to Pantry would always bring on Fridays produce to them for their distribution to 40 of their highest need families. When the pandemic hit, that line became 200 to 400 cars long. So 1 in 3 people in Sonoma County is facing food insecurity right now. And so it has been incredible. We have gleaned in the year of the pandemic, we gleaned over 1 million servings of produce. And we did this with over 300 volunteers going out and giving of their hands and their labor, and over 250 farms and property owners giving of their land and their gift from Mother Earth, and 85 nonprofit agencies. So it takes a village to make this all happen, but Sonoma County has really come together, and I know other communities are doing the same all over the country, is figuring out how to save the food waste so that we don't have those greenhouse emissions that happen. Right. I'm sure people have heard that greenhouse emissions, 40% of the food that we grow in the United States ends up wasted. And that doesn't need to be the case. We just have to get out there and get it to the people who need it the most. So.
Exactly. And, there's a slide I always show in my presentations that China, US, and then food waste, the biggest emitters of greenhouse gas emissions. And you take what we have with the pandemic, and that's probably jumped it up a little bit higher, even more so because nothing was harvested.
Yeah.
And that's
we did a little bit of math on those 1,000 servings that we were able to rescue and deliver on what the greenhouse emissions were saved. And it was equivalent to a car driving 17 times around the world, or the carbon sequestration work of 225 acres of national forest for a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're very proud. Yes. Oh, you guys should be so proud of yourselves. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm very proud of all those property owners and all those volunteers.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know what the little power of going out for an hour can do, doing that work for an hour or however many hours it is can actually, the repercussions or the positive repercussions of that mean for someone else. And that's fantastic.
That cumulative add of good work. My best example of that is with apples. We had in Sonoma County, before there were grapes, there were apples everywhere.
Okay.
And so everybody has apple trees on their property. And normally, in order to make sure that there's diversity in agriculture maintained in Sonoma County, a group called Slow Food does a community apple press every year to encourage people not to pull up their apple tree and plant grapes. So, but this year, because of the pandemic, they didn't have the community press. And so they were worried about what was going to happen to the 50,000 pounds of apples that they went through their press every year. And so we joined forces with them, and we were able to, with volunteers, get all those apples. And when I called the food bank, and I said to our food bank, which was it's Redwood Empire here that serves 5 counties. I said, we want to bring you 50,000 pounds of apples in August and September. How do you feel about that? And they were like, we can't accept them. And I was like, what do you mean? Because I'd worked with them on 20,000 pounds of Meyer lemons in the spring, and they were happy to get those. But why couldn't they take 50,000 pounds of apples? And this is where some of our regulations are bonkers in our country. The USDA buys apples from outside California that the food bank system is required to accept. So they had apples coming from Washington State that the USDA bought for them. So they couldn't get free apples from right here. And so, of course, I'm not very good at a big no. I always climb any mountain to get to yes. And so Slow Food and I sat down and tried to figure out the resolution to this problem. And they reached out to an apple processor that makes applesauce and another one that makes apple juice. And we said, hey, would you be willing to turn 50,000 pounds of apples into applesauce and apple juice if we brought it to you? And then we went back to the food bank after those 2 processors said yes. And we said, if we brought you applesauce and apple juice, which are shelf stable and could last for the whole year, would you accept those? And of course they did. So then after 2 months of all of the volunteers on all of these properties harvesting apples, we did at least 15 gleans a week for those 2 months. And I would say 75% of it was apples. I mean, it was kind of redonkulous. Then I got to see what we created on the day that the food bank showed up with their big mass truck to pick up all applesauce and apple juice. And it was over 14,000 jars of applesauce. It was a wall that was 20 feet high and about 30 feet back of pallets of applesauce. And that I knew that it was just every day a group of people picking 200 to 700 pounds added up to this incredible, it is the power of a lot of small acts that make something big. You need that wall of applesauce.
That is so awesome. I love making applesauce in the fall. And I'm making, 12 jars. So that is mind-boggling. And it takes a lot of apples to make 12 jars of applesauce. Yes. It takes a lot more than you think it does.
It sure does.
So, wow, that's so amazing. I'll have to go back and look at some photos and find those photos and post them, because that's just amazing.
Yeah, I'll email you some.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I reached out to you because this is Women's History Month, and you're making history in food and beverage, and thank you so much for the work that you've done, through your whole life, and now, as a chef and owning a restaurant, and now working with Food to Pantry. So I have to ask you this question because it made me smile, but what inspired you to get here? There's one answer that you had that from your grandfather.
I know. I have to say, I hope it's not trite, because I feel like I'm not the only one with this story, but it's totally true. I'll also send you a picture of the photo with me and my grandfather when I was 5 years old. But my very favorite toy when I was 5 years old was my Easy Bake Oven, which for those, I feel like everybody knows what that is, but it's basically a little kid oven that cooks by the power of a light bulb, and it makes like a pancake size cake. And that was my favorite toy. Of course, when I was little, it had a lot less safety features than it does now. Like you could actually open a door and you could use a little tong thing to pull out your cake pan, and you could actually, hurt yourself, which I'm sure I did, but I didn't mind. I of course tried to, get that same toy for my kids, and now there's so many safety features you can't like really see in there and see the cake baking.
Oh.
It's a little bit less exciting, but of course I like danger. But so basically I cooked my grandfather's birthday cake when I was 5, and I'm very addicted to immediate gratification, which I think most chefs are. It's a pretty simple equation. Like you cook the food, somebody eats the food, and they tell you they like it, and then you're thrilled with your work. It's pretty fast. Like I don't have to be patient for anything. And so the feeling of my grandfather being elated made me so proud. That I made my little pancake with a candle in it, and that he really enjoyed it. And I'm sure it was probably terrible, but he didn't act like it was.
Most grandfathers don't, they just eat it, right? And the other part of that question, the answer that you said, I just loved it as, chefs are givers. And I think this is really important. I'm a meeting planner, and I do teach cooking. I used to teach cooking classes for kids, but you're making something for someone, which reiterates exactly what you just did for your grandfather. And it's putting yourself into that, putting in the ingredients that you care about or that they need into that dish, and then helping them feel satiated and happy and such.
Yeah, like when you said, how did you get here? So, of course, I talked about the Easy Bake Oven being sort of the spark of loving making people happy. But sort of how did I get to Farm to Pantry? So I lost my restaurant in a flood in 2019. And then my husband and I turned to our bacon company, Black Pig Meat Co., and our food truck, the Black Piglet. But then, of course, when the pandemic hit, we lost 250 events in 1 year. We did 2 events in the year of 2020. And so clearly having both of us invested in our family business was not really a workable situation. So I hit the pavement, and normally what my husband and I have done in every disaster, which is what I was saying, every chef I feel like does this in whatever their community needs, we show up, we show up and we cook, whether it's at a nonprofit event or a natural disaster. So in my community, what it had meant was we showed up every time there was a fire, and we cooked for all the evacuees and the firefighters, which sadly is every single year, and last year multiple times. So, but then when the pandemic hit, my go-to of how I give back didn't feel safe. I wasn't going to head into a kitchen because it's tight quarters. You're bumping into people, and you love that. I mean, I love working in a team tight like that, but not when you're afraid that you're going to take out your family. And so someone told me about gleaning, and they said, you should go check out Farm to Pantry. So I went to a farm here in Sonoma County called Front Porch Farm, which is one of the most incredible, beautiful farms in Sonoma County. But of course, we're lucky everywhere here. But they actually pulled up grapes on their property to plant diversity of agriculture, and they grow for Farm to Pantry on a weekly basis. We go there to pick up. Wow. And so very first glean, and they also grow flowers that they sell in the farmers markets. And so it's this incredibly gorgeous spot right by the river in Healdsburg, and beautiful flowers and incredible like head of cauliflower this big, and blackberries and strawberries, and just incredible things that they grow for others. And I felt safe because I was 6 feet apart from everybody and we were all masked. All the gear, the buckets, the pickers, like everything is sanitized. So, and I could give physical labor and give back. And then in the very same day that we harvest, like we harvest in the first half of the day and the second half of the day we deliver. And I got immediate gratification again, and I got unlimited gratitude on the receiving end. Like one day in the summer, we were picking peaches, and they were the kind of peaches that from a beautiful farm called Home Farm in Healdsburg also. These kind of white peaches that were succulent and juicy and floral and fragrant and like just the amazing kind where the juice is dripping.
Oh, those are the best. Yes.
The best peach ever. And normally these would be, $5+ each in a farmer's market. And when I had my restaurant, I got to serve this incredible produce from Sonoma County, but I only got to serve it to the lucky few, right? But now I'm on this farm getting these peaches, and I go to a tent village of homeless folks, and I have a wine box because we, recycle everything. So all of our food is going in wine boxes from the wineries here. And I show up with a wine box on my shoulder of these incredible peaches, and it's a Friday afternoon, and it's 105 degrees out, and they have these like misters out because no one can get out of the heat. And I show up with my box of peaches and I hand it over to a security guard because there's like a tent village here in Sonoma County. Okay. where people can be and live safely. So I hand it to the security guard, but I can't see all the people and they're behind a fence. And I hand him the box and I say, can you find out if they think they could eat another box in the next day and a half? Because I could give them another box, but the shelf life on these is about a day and a half. And if not, I'll take them elsewhere. Like I just want the right amount for each location. So he takes them over there and I hear the voices over the fence and they're all like, this is the best peach ever. I've never eaten a peach like this in my life. Listen, lady, like these are so good. Thank you so much. And so, of course, I did give them a second box because they thought that they could devour them in time before, it was too late. But the reward of, the restaurant industry can be tough, like all the Yelp reviews and like even when you put yourself out there on the line and not everybody likes what you do. Like you can like what you do, but somebody's got an opinion, which to me, I wish they would all be quiet unless it was kind. Like I think they didn't show up for kindergarten when we were taught, just to say nice things and be quiet if you're not into it. But at any rate, owning a restaurant, you put yourself out there and a lot of people say what they think, regardless of whether they are kind or not. But in this case, I get to deliver the incredible head of lettuce or this peach that I described to you, to absolutely everybody. Like it's not about privilege. It's about equal access. Everybody gets it. And so I feel like Robin Hood. I feel like I can't believe I landed this perfect job for me because I know all the farmers here from buying from over 200 of them for 19 years. So it was very easy to turn those relationships into helping others. Like, the 19 years of buying and caring about the farmers in our community because I wanted diversity of agriculture here. I felt lucky for it. Mm-hmm. But so then they're an incredible bunch of people. I love farmers, clearly.
The labor of their love. And I mean, it's seriously the labor, that they're putting in to give us a carrot or give us a tomato or whatever it is. It is 100% pure labor. If you've never been to a farm, you need to go visit a farm for sure.
And you need to try to grow something so you can respect and understand that things take 2 months to a year to grow, depending on, and you get one pop of a season and then you have to try to survive the whole year.
And if and I lived in Atlanta for 22 years. And this morning or earlier today, I talked to Aaron Kroom and Chef Asada Reed from Small Bites Adventure Club, and they're doing farm to table kits that are sending out to kids all over to teach them about vegetables. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and they get a knife and they're getting cooking lessons and all of this. And it's so amazing because we forget the value, but they're also teaching a class on seeds and growing, what it means to grow that and to know what it is and then to eat it. And I'll send you the link to them and introduce you to them.
Yeah, I would love.
Yeah. So there are some women that I've known for a long time working in the farm to table community. But it is, and they're introduced, each of the kids gets a video from the farmer that kit was made from. So they get to meet that farmer and learn what they did to harvest it and all of that stuff. So I think that's awesome because we do need to get back to knowing who our farmers are and where our food comes from. I think we've covered what your biggest obstacles are in, doing this. One of the things that I did ask you is that what did you want to be when you grow up? And you did go to pre-med and studied pre-med and law before you became a chef. What
I'm sure my parents are like that. Well, I went to Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, and I was in a program that they have there. I don't know if they still have it, but they probably do, called PLME, which was you could get your undergrad degree and your med degree in 7 years there. But I quickly realized that wasn't my calling. I was phobic of blood. So in the kitchen, when somebody cuts themselves, I'm always like, don't show me. Just tell me, do I need to drive you to the hospital? Like, because so that was
a mobile butchery, a mobile processing.
I know it is ridiculous now. I have to tell you. Well, it comes around, but so maybe I should go back to med school. But anyway, so I was like, no. And then also at the time before we all had technology like this, where reserved reading was not something accessible on the computer where somebody could send you a link. Instead,
right.
When I was in college, there would be like 3 copies of an article in the science library that everyone had to go and check out in the science library and to read. And I don't know why they didn't make copies for all of us, but I guess it would be too expensive or something. But then what would happen is somebody would steal the reading from the science library because they didn't want anyone else to be able to read it, and they wanted to get a better grade. Nice. And I was like, really? Like that, these are not my people. I immediately decided like that kind of, I don't know, trickery or just being a bad player in the world. Like I try to be a good player in the world. And I was like, and I'm not saying all doctors are like this, because obviously I hope most doctors are wonderful. And certainly the doctors now in the pandemic, like doctors and nurses, like to me, they're risking their lives every single minute, to help all of us. So I am not trying to badmouth doctors, but it wasn't my calling. So I bagged out on that. And of course, then in my family, if you weren't going to be a doctor, you were supposed to be a lawyer. So I switched to pre-law. I did get into law school. And it's kind of funny. I got into a law school, Lewis and Clark in Oregon. And at the same time that I got into law school, I had been working in restaurants through college and after college. I got offered a chef position in Seattle working for Tom Douglas, running his restaurant Palace Kitchen. And so I was like, do I go to law school or do I work for Tom Douglas as a chef? And you know what I did? I worked for Tom Douglas. And I loved working for Tom Douglas. So I never went to law school, but my daughter, who is a senior in high school right now and applying to colleges, may end up at Lewis and Clark. She's looking at a couple schools, but one of them is Lewis and Clark, where they have a 3+3 program, which is kind of like the PLME that was at Brown, but instead it's for law school. So in 6 years, you get your undergrad and your law degree all wrapped up in one. And she has been accepted to that program. So, I mean, but maybe she'll end up being a butcher or a chef. So we'll see.
into the family business. Yes.
Yeah, she started butchering with us when she was 10 years old.
Wow.
She's now 18, but when she was 13, a magazine in San Francisco called 7x7 did a feature on her as a young female butcher. So who knows what will happen?
That's awesome. And okay, and so speaking on that, one of the other questions, what has been important to you as a woman in the food and beverage industry? And that ties into exactly what you just said about your daughter, is that the support system that's there.
Yeah. What I love about being a female chef is I love teams, and I love when women help women or empower women to do more than what they could do by themselves. And obviously I don't like it when women are awful to each other, which, like, if you watch The Bachelor, or which one of my daughters loves watching that show. But to me, that is like, the women are awful to each other. It's just awful. And that's because they're put in this competitive thing. And because we haven't had access, a lot of times women don't help other women get forward. They actually put impediments to other women getting forward. And that, of course, is exactly what I don't like. And what I do like is when women work together and raise each other up to another level. And so I have an incredible posse of supportive women chef friends. Tanya Holland in Oakland, Elizabeth Faulkner in Los Angeles, Amanda Freitag in New York, Preeti Mystery, who just yesterday launched a show on Netflix, Krista Ludke at Boone in Guerneville, Dominica Catelli at Catelli's in Geyserville, Liza Hinman at Spinster Sisters, and a bunch of us rode 300 miles together on a bike ride for No Kid Hungry called Chef's Cycle. And I have to tell you, the year, basically, Share Our Strength, which is the organization that puts this on, wanted to get more women involved in this ride because it was predominantly a bunch of dudes, and because it's a ridiculous ride. It's 3 days of 100 miles a day. So they reached out trying to get more women involved. And of course, Tanya, who ended up not doing the ride, got me involved. So I love that when you get in there and then the person helps out. But of course, I, nothing, as I said, no mountain will be too great, but I hadn't ridden a bike in 25 years. I had my bike from college. I took it into the bike shop and I said, hey, can you get this thing running again? And they laughed at me. I had to buy a new bike. And if you asked me, can you ride 100 miles a day for 3 days? I would have told you absolutely not. No way. No, I cannot do that. Physically, I cannot do that. And so it's one of those things, another trite thing, which is that the power of the group is greater than the power of one. Because by having all these people doing the ride with me, I could do it. I could do something that I absolutely could not do without them. Because of course, I'm competitive and I want to be with my friends. And so, I would have a strong will, the will of an ox. Yes. So basically, sorry, my dog wants to visit the podcast as well. But so I love women chefs that back each other up. That's my love of how we operate in this field, because access is not equal. It's still not. We have made progress. When I was in middle school, I had a little sticker or a little pin that I wore every day to school that said 69 cents. Because women made 69 cents to the dollar for the exact same job. And now, today, it's 81 cents. So we have made progress, but we still have a way to go, both in pay, but also in the Me Too movement. I would tell you, I don't know a woman chef that hasn't had that experience. So we have a long way to go, and we don't have equal access to capital, which is how you get forward. We don't have equal access to the media in terms of the coverage or the awards. And so those things are real, and we have we have work to do, progress to be made. And so I'm grateful for how far we've come, but we're not done. We need to keep advocating and helping each other along the way.
100% agree. And the fact that you were wearing that when you were a little girl and still are tracking that is really, really valuable and inspiring at the same time, because it's just, we still have to work. And as you said, your grandmother said, is work your fanny off. We still need to work your fanny off to get there and do what we need to do.
Like when we look at the percentage of female CEOs running Fortune 500 companies versus the percentage of women chefs running kitchens, it's under 5% of women chefs running kitchens. It's like 4.6% or something. And Fortune 500 CEOs for women, I think, is 6.6%. So like both are redonkulous, but it's like even lower for women to run kitchens, which to me seems like, how come we're the ones to cook in the home then? It's only when it's for money or fame that we don't have access.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting because with my podcast and with my course, I want to reach out to hotel chefs and culinary catering chefs and things. And when I think about it, the ones that come off the top of my head that I've met in the hotels, they're all men. And I'm like, okay, where are my female chefs that I can talk to about this, who are making food in hotels and in catering companies? And I think catering companies are a little bit more women-based than hotel chefs are. But I'm like, I want to call on every one of you and Tanya and all of that to put that experience into here and show what we have and what we can do. We got a lot of ways to get there. Yeah.
I just did an event actually with Tanya. It was Tanya's event in Maui, and she asked if I would come be her sous chef, which of course I'm
sorry. No, I can't do that.
I'm happy to be your sous chef if I get a vacation in Hawaii. But we had a meeting with the women in the hospitality side of the hotel where we were staying. And the pandemic has made the situation even harder for women because of homeschooling and because of needing to care for elderly parents. That generally falls on the women in the family. And so as jobs get offered back to people, as industries start back up, there are a number of women who are not taking the job back because they can't, because they have to stay at home for their kids, or they have to stay at home for their parents. And so women are losing progress that we made right now in incredible numbers. And the woman who was the head of HR for this big hotel was like, I can't guarantee these people that when they can, their job will still be there. And so this is going to be a lasting impact for all of us. And it is a community problem. But it's also that when we earn less per hour, of course, if one person's going to stay home and one person's going to go to work, it's going to be, it's not the case in my family because my husband is amazing.
And that's really sad. And but it's the fact. And when you do have to put food on the table and when you do have to pay the bills and you have to balance out, where's the higher revenue coming from? Unfortunately, that's going to do that. Okay, so 2 more questions because we're at 45 minutes. I love this. What are 5 things, or what's something that you really, well, we've kind of already talked about this, but what are 5 things that you really appreciate about what the food and beverage industry and what you guys are doing at Farm to Pantry?
Well, what I do at Farm to Pantry, what I appreciate is that it's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win for everybody. So it's a win for Mother Earth because food isn't wasted and we're eliminating greenhouse gas emissions. It's a win for the farmer because the work that they put in is going somewhere very special. It's a win for the recipient because now they have immunity boosting fruits and vegetables in their bag. Most food banks have lots of dried goods, canned goods, but not the fruits and vegetables, which are the greatest nutritional value. So it's food justice in that access for everybody. But also it's an incredible experience for the volunteers because you give your labor and you're helping somebody else. So it's like a random act of kindness. Like you don't even know the person on the other end. And the gratification that you feel of giving your muscles and your sweat and your time to help somebody else that you don't even know in this incredible way. Because when somebody gets to feed their family incredible produce, you feel better. Like that peach changed the day for those people. A head of lettuce can change a day. Like, like it just, you feel better. And so, to me, that is what is so rewarding about what I'm doing now. I mean, as a chef, of course, there are so many things that are rewarding. For me, originally, what I got into was the art of it. Like I took a lot of art classes too. I love to paint and do oil pastels and things like that. And cooking is so many layered art because it's visual on the plate and it's textural in terms of soft and crunchy. It's also flavor wise, like you want acid and salt and heat and sweet. And so there's so many different senses that you're balancing, and hot and cold. So if you like the thing that makes your mouth happy is when it hits everything. Like, is it visually appealing in its height and its color combination and whatever the shapes are on your plate, and is it? So I loved that at the very beginning of cooking. I would say that was part of my joy, but also making people happy, like bringing people together at a table. Like, to me, that's where the best things in life happen, is people having conversation together at a table. It just fills you up in a soulful way. So, but of course, to me personally, the most rewarding part of life, more than work, is your family. My kids are my greatest reward. Watching them be excited about something or inspired about something or to care about something that they want to advocate for, that I would tell you is my greatest joy, that I can have kids that give a damn about something and want to leave this world a better place on the daily. Like, and that's all that each of us can do. And yeah, so I'm totally proud of my kids. And obviously I'm so lucky to have a husband that I still adore 25 years later, because we're an amazing team and he is so patient. He has all these things that I don't have. And I love being around him. So to me, your own family is number one, definitely.
That's awesome. I don't even want to ask you the next question, which is, and that was just, because that's a fabulous way to end on how we talk about food and beverage and what food and beverage means to us and to community and to families and just to the earth. So, yeah, it was. Well, I'll just put that on the blog post, the answer to the other question. So thank you so much for giving of your time today and giving of your time every single day to this community that feeds us and sustains us and makes us whole. Your work is remarkable to me. And I am, to me, you're making history, and I appreciate that.
Tracy, thank you for including me. And if anyone either wants to get our bacon or any of our candies or snout to tail products, we also make soap and lip balm. You can get it on blackpigmeatco.com. And if you want to find more about Farm to Pantry, you would go to farmtopantry.org. And if you want to find out more about local meat in Northern California, you can go to bayarearanchers.com. Okay.
I will put all of those links in the feed so everybody has them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And everybody, thank you for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where we talk to experts and influencers and advocates for a safe, inclusive, and sustainable food and beverage. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye, Tracy.
You. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.